the COVID-19 pandemic. Straight away, thank you to our audience and of course to our participants for joining us today. My name is Roman Udler. I'm initially from Munich, Germany, and currently I'm an international medical student at the Vilnius University studying in the 4th year. Moreover, I'm the coordinator for International Students Affairs at the Vilnius University Students Representation, helping with the internalization of the Vilnius University, as well as with the faculties and the students representation. And I'm going to be your moderator for today. In order for our audience to get some background about yourself and about your work, I would like to introduce you or to introduce yourselves as the participants. And maybe we can start with Dorothy.
Hi, thank you, Roman. I am Dorothy Kelly, a professor of translating and interpreting at the University of Granada in Spain, where I have also been vice rector responsible for internationalization. So like yourself, responsible for internationalization since 2008. So for quite some time now. And during that time, I have been very active in European networks, European university networks, in particular the Coimbra Group, and thus been very, very close to European policies on higher education and in particular the internationalization of higher education. I have also worked in the Bologna experts team in Spain, so something that I'm also very, very interested in. And since 2018, the coordinator of what is today the ARQUS European University Alliance, which we're going to be able to spend some time speaking about this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dorothy. Continuing with our second participant, Benedetta.
Hi, hello. Thank you for your invitation and happy birthday for your 31st birthday. I am Benedetta Zatti. At Padova University, I am the head of the inclusion sector, which is one of the 3 sectors in a broader office called Student Service Office. As far as ARQUS is concerned, I'm the chair of Action Line 2, which is about widening access, inclusion, and diversity. Before working at Padova University, where in the first place I used to work at the Language Center, organizing the Erasmus courses mainly, and coordinating a project of language acquisition for Italian as a second language for foreigners. I actually had a long experience in schools, mainly working in connection with the 3rd sector for the inclusion of school pupils and families as well, coming from different countries, children, immigrant and immigrant families. I'm very happy to be here today and I'm ready to listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benedetta. And continuing with our third participant, Andrius, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andrius Urdanavičius. Well, I probably have to start introducing myself by telling that I was the president of Students Representation a couple of years ago for 2 terms. And congrats, happy birthday for the organization that led me to higher education. That's my career to higher education. Now I am the head of studies and of quality of studies and development office in Vilnius University. As far as ARQUS is concerned, I'm chairing action line number 3, which is called Student-Centered Frameworks for Quality Learning, an action line mostly related to the topic we'll be discussing today, to the mobility of students, joint study programs, short-term, long-term mobilities, quality of teaching, continuous professional development of faculties, and so on and so forth. Yeah, academic background, psychology. tried starting with physics, didn't like it, then switched to psychology, then to organizational psychology. Yeah, that's basically it. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Andrius. And our last participant, Lasse, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me, and happy birthday to your anniversary. I just want to stress that we have a very interesting commonality between us, because the Student Council of Leipzig also has its 31st anniversary this year. Legend has it that on the 9th of November 1989, somebody interrupted our meeting of our founding meeting and said the wall is open, and everybody continued with the business in founding the Student Council. So I'm very glad to be here and to speak with you. I'm the president of the ARQUS Student Council, and I really want to increase student involvement in ARQUS and want to get everybody to work, and that we can really coordinate ourselves and get to know each other and to increase our share in ARQUS. And I'm studying in Leipzig sociology in my master's, and I'm still finishing my bachelor's in geography, which is just kind of like a side project which has been on ice for a few semesters, but I'm still optimistic to one day finish it.
Thank you very much, Lasse, and of course to all of our participants. We're very lucky to have you with us today, celebrating our 31st birthday. Big thanks to you. So with our representatives of the ARQUS University Alliance, we will talk about supporting student mobility during this difficult period, and we will talk about possible solutions to the problems that arise, the pros and cons of studying at a foreign university, even during COVID-19 pandemic. For our audience, please, if you will have questions, use our YouTube live stream to comment below, so we can present some of your questions by the end of the discussion, so our participants can answer them. Okay. Starting with our first part of the discussion, as I have mentioned right now, we have ARQUS representatives as our participants for our discussion. But before we start with the main part of the discussion, I would like to clarify what ARQUS is, what it does, in order for the audience to understand what ARQUS is about. And maybe the coordinator of the ARQUS Alliance, Dorothy, maybe you can give some background, like to describe ARQUS in your own words.
Thank you, Roman, a pleasure. Can I just start also by thanking you very much for the opportunity to be here today with you, and congratulating you, of course, on that 31st birthday of the student representation at Vilnius University. And it's very interesting to see this coincidence with Leipzig, which Lasse has just commented on. In Spain, student representation was recuperated late 70s, early 80s. So not very much before Leipzig and Vilnius. So I think similarities there perhaps amongst the three institutions. Student representation is particularly important for ARQUS, and that's something that we will perhaps come back to. I just very briefly want to describe what ARQUS is. ARQUS is one of the first 17 European universities approved under the Erasmus Plus call, which arose from an idea of the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, who in 2017 proposed the setting up of European universities. Of course, he didn't actually propose what form these would take, and a discussion arose within the European Commission as to what form a European university would take. And the first idea which has materialized is that of small-scale alliances of like-minded universities. So ARQUS is an alliance of 7 long-standing comprehensive research universities who share extensive experience in joint projects and a common profile as internationalized institutions with, at the same time, deep regional engagement. And we are working in 6 different areas. Our mission shall we say, is to transform the universities of today, to move towards the universities of the future, a transformation which we hope will be structural, systemic, and sustainable, and a transformation which inevitably, in our view, must touch the three main missions of the university: learning and teaching, research, and service to society in all senses, not simply the transfer of knowledge in the economic sense to society, but service to society in the broadest sense. And for that reason, the 7 universities agreed. You said 2 years ago. It's true that our first meetings date way back to beyond 2 years ago, in fact. But as an actual selected, financed and approved alliance, we started our work on the 1st of October 2019, and we recently celebrated our first birthday as the ARQUS Alliance on the 18th of October, which is the date when our 7 rectors signed the final constitution agreement and set up our Rectors' Council. I think ARQUS is an opportunity. ARQUS is an opportunity, and I'm sure my 3 colleagues will also be happy to add and to build on this. It's an opportunity to work and to build the future of our universities, thinking first and foremost of our students, thinking also, of course, of our staff, of all of our staff, and thinking in very particularly of the society which we serve. And that is the reason why we have identified 6 major areas where we want to work together. 2 have already been mentioned by Benedetta, who chairs the Widening Access, Inclusion and Diversity area. And I think it is fairly clear here that is a clear sign of one of our basic principles, that of inclusion of all members of our communities. The second is the action line which Andreas chairs, and he has already mentioned, and again here the name itself will give a clear idea of what we want to do: student-centered frameworks for quality learning. That is, we want to look at the improvement of learning and teaching. We want to look at true implementation of one of the bases of Bologna, that is true student-centered methodologies and learning. The other areas, just very briefly, because I don't want to speak for too long, but are the promotion of multilingualism and multiculturalism. We believe that the future of Europe, but also the global future, requires multilingualism, but in particular intercultural competence, where our students are competent to work in the globalized world in which we all live. A further action line is on the entrepreneurial university and regional engagement. Entrepreneurial, not just in the sense of businesses, on setting up businesses, but entrepreneurial in the sense of an attitude to life, an entrepreneurial spirit, where we hope to help students and researchers to develop an entrepreneurial approach to their own activity. And then 2 final areas. One is in research support and early career researcher development. That is looking very particularly at the doctoral cycle, at our young researchers, how to help young researchers to move forward in their career, to develop an international approach to their career by facilitating their networking, but also trying to help our senior researchers to work together and hence enhance their research. And finally, and also importantly, from the point of view of our basic values, we are working on the idea, the concept of engaged European citizens. Engaged European citizens who are familiar with the values of Europe, the values of democratic culture, as the Council of Europe would put it, but of course looking also beyond Europe to the rest of the world, with an eye in particular on the Sustainable Development Goals. And around those 6 major themes, we're organizing a huge amount of activity for students, for doctoral for candidates, for researchers, for academic staff and for non-academic staff, based on mobility, which is one of the areas I know we're going to discuss a little bit more today. And in particular, this issue which you have brought to the table of what is the future of mobility post-pandemic? How has the pandemic impacted on mobility? Should we still be looking at mobility in the same way? These are issues which we are looking at in ARQUS, while at the same time facilitating greater opportunities for mobility when we can have mobility, of course, but also looking at how new technologies can help us there. And maybe I'll come back to some specific examples a little bit later on, rather than explain it all now.
Yeah, thank you very much for this precise description of ARQUS, what it is, and you have already talked about the benefits of ARQUS activities for the students that are basically implemented in the different universities via the action lines that you are also coordinating. And maybe we can talk a little bit more what has been already achieved since the establishment of ARQUS, since it started to work in 2019. Maybe Andrius, maybe you could tell us what has been done already in your action line, and maybe we can talk also about like what has been accomplished already in the Benedetta's action line so far.
Well, even though the couple of months after starting the project, after the official start of the Alliance, global pandemic broke out, and we had a couple of setbacks in our work, but I think everything goes quite well. Well, first of all, the first thing we did was to sign an open Erasmus mobility agreement, which means that students from all the fields in all these 7 universities can move freely to other universities, whether it would be Bergen, Granada, Padova, Leipzig, Graz, or Lyon, or Vilnius. So that means that we do not need any, agreements in the specific area between the professors and the departments in the specific area for students to be able to choose Erasmus, to choose this partner university as a way to do his or her Erasmus. That's the first thing. The other thing, we had a couple discussions on mobility. We're having one on Tuesday, actually, about quality teaching and teaching quality in general. What will be needed post-pandemic? What will be the benefits of this period, and so on. With the students, we have some shared training offer for our academic staff in sharing experiences in pedagogies. We started preparing joint study programs. They are not implemented yet, actually, but hopefully some of the activities will start at 2021. We are working on European studies. We are working on global cybersecurity and translation and interpreting. So 3 groups of academic personnel from different universities are trying to find a way to create joint study programs where students could move around while they are studying. That would be 3 master's joint programs. As I said, they will at least some of these joint activities and at least some short to long-term mobilities will start at the academic year of 2021. What else I can say? That I would say by now we are working on mobility windows. That's I would say a little bit less intense collaboration than joint study programs, but we're trying to find a way to offer a semester for students to work on their international competencies, preferably by being mobile. So sharing on different experiences these universities that we are working with have. We are trying to introduce mobility windows in study programs, and that will be a semester for students to be able to either to go to either to go to other university to choose some subject-specific modules, maybe some electives in different universities, or to, I don't know, choose their internship, international internship in different companies and so on. You know, the semester that will be dedicated to international experiences. So we're working on this, and we'll start in introducing these mobility windows in our study programs quite shortly. One other call that is announced right now is twinning activities. Well, it's for students as well as for teachers. Teachers have to apply. So if students, I think more students are listening, I would ask you to approach your teachers if you'd like to participate in this kind of initiative. But up until the end of December, teachers can apply and get finances to have a short-term mobility together with a group of students to a partner university, to his counterpart in other, ARQUS University, to have some activities over there. That would be 1 week mobility, probably, where students together would have some kind of the activities can be very different. You know, it can be just seminars, workshops, a summer school together with their colleagues and so on. It can be blended, you know, some activities before, some virtual activities, then getting together in Vilnius, Lyon, again, Bergen, and so on, and then some blended activities, virtual activities when they get back. So yeah, I would ask you to approach your teachers and ask them to apply to collaborate with their partners in these universities. And probably the last thing that is not that, you know, clear, like a call, like a mobility, like a study program and so on, is the collaboration, the amount of collaborations we have in this action lab. Quite a lot of people are involved, students as well as teachers, as well as administrative staff, sharing experiences, sharing what they are dealing with right now. And even though all of us have lots and lots of these Zoom meetings, of these virtual discussions, are really fed up with looking at the screen all day. But it's really helpful to see that everyone is in the same situation. Everyone is getting tired of the Zoom. Everyone is dealing with these things, and just sharing these experiences. How do we do it? How can we how can we deal with it? Really helps a lot personally for me and for other people I usually see in these meetings as well, I think. So
thank you very much, Andrew. Talking maybe about the action line 2, about widening the access, inclusion, and diversity. How did the University of Padova manage to accomplish things in this kind of field? Maybe Benedetta, could you tell us a little bit more about it, what you have accomplished already in Padova?
More than in Padova, I should say within the Alliance, because from the very start, we actually are working all 7 together. And that is, I think, one of the most important achievements of this first year of ARQUS. For Action Line 2, we actually have more or less 200 people involved, engaged, on board, working at the 13 different task forces, which means 13 different activities we have to develop within the 3 years. And these are all very innovative and challenging activities, because of course we have the ultimate goal of, as the title of our action line says, promoting widening access for diverse student and staff population, facilitating inclusive admission and recruitment policies. And we have in mind to attract talent especially from the most underrepresented groups. Inclusion is not an easy objective, because it's not about creating personalized pathways for people who have some kind of vulnerability. It's all about planning or transforming contexts so that they can actually embrace diversity and ensure that every single person with his or her uniqueness and background can actually fully participate in academic, in social, and also in civil life. And this means to address global, grand societal challenges in this very period of our life. The 13 activities actually covered the whole life cycle of each person, because we actually are developing inclusion starting with a preschool, pre-university, period, and then going towards university. The transition is about there, and then from university to the world of work, and so the post-university life of every single person. I think the main achievement was actually an organizational structure, first of all, because we actually have managed to begin with all 13 activities. We are working hard at all the 13 activities. And we are developing the themes of equity, diversity, and inclusion, engaging children, primary and secondary school pupils and teachers, university students, tutors, academic and also administrative staff. And we're trying really to develop programs which are gender neutral, heterogeneity sensitive, both from the learning teaching point of view and also from the social life within universities, but not only within universities. We are constantly trying to reach out to the local environment, to the regional territories, and to the national, and then at the European level, trying to connect as much as possible among each other. And this actually has started fully, and it's an amazing opportunity. I think a unique opportunity we have to cooperate across languages, across borders, across disciplines, to address such very challenging societal challenges. For the moment, we are working hard at building bottom-up networks, both at university level, but also, as I said, with the connection with the reciprocal territories. And of course, embracing the differences that are among us, because we belong to very different parts of Europe, from west to east, from south to north, and vice versa. And the challenge is also in that. In every single thing we do, we always keep in mind that the students' presence and full active participation is essential to us. In fact, in Action Line 2, we already have on board a few students with vulnerabilities, for example, students with disabilities, with learning disorders, students with a refugee background, for example. And recently, we've also engaged our student representative in ARQUS Student Council in one of the 13 activities, which is about creating support networks for inclusion, which is, by the way, the most transversal activity we have. And she's there, and she's very important for us.
Thank you very, very much, Benedetta. So as we can see and hear, ARQUS provides a great opportunity for students, but also for academic staff, non-academic staff, and different people from different institutions to be united and to make people, and of course the future students, to become engaged citizens and global problem solvers. And it's amazing to hear that such opportunities are offered to our universities and to our alliance and to all the students in the future. And talking about the future, Lasse, recently there was an interview published on the ARQUS website on the International Students' Day. How do you see the future of ARQUS Alliance in regards to collaborations during the COVID-19 pandemic? Maybe you can point out some advantages, some disadvantages, and as well as challenges, and maybe also solutions that you already have.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. I think for the future on ARQUS, in the interview with the with ARQUS on the International Students' Day, I said that one of the things very important to us and to me is to increase the student mobility and to stay, in the long term at least, stay true to the original goals laid out by Emmanuel Macron in 2017. Because even though we have this major setback with COVID and are switching many things into virtual rooms and virtual places, I still believe, as a sociologist and geographer with a background in interaction rituals, that we need those interaction rituals face to face and to build true strong networks and to properly teach and to have this the whole experience, in my opinion. So in the long term we should do that, but I think in between other means can be possible, because to make these visions a reality, we need to also include, for example, the social dimension, which is very costly. We can talk about diversity all we want, but in the end, a lot of students will have problems with the social dimension, and so we need to also lobby externally for more fundings to be able to truly get to 50% mobility abroad, and maybe even more, hopefully. And I also wanted to get back to the similarity between Vilnius Student Union and Leipzig Student Union, and also what Dorothy said about the founding of the Spanish Student Union, which in the late 70s, if I'm not mistaken, is the time when the Franco dictatorship got removed, and then one of the first steps towards democracy was funding student unions. And I believe that Europe is right now at a point where we have some difficulties. Great Britain is leaving the European Union. Viktor Orban and Kaczynski and PiS in Poland are blocking democratic developments, and I think we could need some new adrenaline kick to the European project. And I think building inclusive and well-working democratic student structures can be such an adrenaline kick, and I think that's also a big part of what my future vision of ARQUS is, and I'm very happy and feel very welcome, because I don't feel that this vision is a fringe position as it sometimes feels in lobbying on other levels. For example, I've been speaker of the Saxonian Students' Union, and we're running often into problems where especially the conservatives don't want us to have more democratic involvement, and I think we can use this opportunity. And so in conclusion, my two big visions for ARQUS are starkly increased student mobility and democratic student involvement. And I'm very, very happy to work with you on that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lasse. And of course, again, thank you for presenting ARQUS, what it is about, how you are going to work with these particular topics. Coming now to the main topic of our discussion. According to a working paper series published by the Center for Global Higher Education about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on international higher education, and student mobility, the higher education sector is facing disruptions in the marketing throughout campus closures, travel bans, and restrictions on the mobility of staff and students, as we have pointed out already. Many courses and other activities have migrated online or have been suspended at all. It remains unclear how long such restrictions will last and when staff and students can return to the campus life. And however, we can be certain about long after effects of the pandemic on our daily life, how we were used to it, focusing primarily on the impact of the crisis on international student mobility and futures. We will talk also about challenges for institutions in managing and responding to changing mobility flows and dynamics. So how is the future of international education in a post-COVID-19 era is going to look like, and what adjustments have to be made regarding our prevailing mobility culture and practices? My first question, I would like to direct it straight away to Andrius. What do you say? Is it necessary to think about strategies on how to accomplish virtual studies to be as qualitative as normal studies abroad? Or would you say that virtual studies are only temporary throughout the time of the crisis and currently do not need any improvements?
it's definitely not temporal. This shift is definitely not. But first of all, what we have to understand, what we are having now is not online learning and not normal online learning and teaching that would be called of high quality. We are just dealing with a crisis. We're installing Teams and giving the same lectures and hearing the same lectures we would have heard in the campus, and that's not how it should be then, you know. If you are switching to distance teaching, you have to change your methodology, your approach to teaching, quite from the roots, and you cannot choose the same methods you used to in campus, of methods of teaching, methods of evaluation. So your strategies for that have to change. And I would say only a couple of teachers already did that, because you know that's you need to have quite extensive training on the pedagogies to be able to shift your teaching to this direction. That's why at least in Vilnius University and of course in all the network, what we're trying to do is to provide help for teachers in this situation. Provide not help how to use all these technical tools, but how to change their teaching with these tools. I mean, it's not enough just to increase digital competences of teachers and think that okay, they know how to use Kahoot, immediately everything will become interactive. You know, it's not the case. So yeah, we definitely have a long way to go with all the professional development of teachers. And I think one of the good things that will come up from this pandemic is that there will definitely be much more attention paid to teaching, to quality of teaching, because we all know that basically your career path was based on research in an academic area. Now more and more attention is paid to teaching. Even before pandemic, Bologna process started to notice that we need some common criteria in Europe on what quality teaching is. That's what we are doing actually in ARQUS. We are trying to say, okay, in this alliance, how do we understand what is quality teaching? And of course, this digital dimension will be introduced as well. So yeah, just what do we need to understand? It's not online teaching what we're having now, and we definitely need more competencies in that. The other thing, and my idea is how it will evolve. Of course, the teaching will become, distance teaching will become much more quality, but it won't change campus learning. Maybe some parts of the programs will be provided, especially for non-European students, to be able to study semester or two of more theoretical subjects while staying at home. That will be cheaper for them. They won't have to travel, and then a couple semesters on campus physically. But the good thing, this again, I'm trying to be optimistic. Good thing this pandemic showed to us is that campus learning is cannot be changed. And when everyone started drawing apocalyptic scenarios when MOOCs were introduced, they said, okay, we won't need universities anymore. Everyone will be able to learn through Coursera or FutureLearn or something like that. Now we see how many students are actually fed up as well by learning from only from Teams, you know, and quite a lot of them probably are taking gap years, you know, to be able to come to campus when all of this will be over. So that shows how valuable is the community of university and not the teacher itself, you know, the lone teacher, the student, the department, I don't know, the equipment, but the community and the feeling of it and all of the activities in university, like participating in the I don't know, in activities of students representation in the choir or some taking some sports activities after your lessons and so on. So the good thing is that even though everyone now understood that, oh, it's possible to teach and learn online, no one wants to do it anymore in these terms. So yeah, other thing is that even though we will have more distance learning for people who cannot come to campus, campus learning won't disappear. And the third thing, we have more opportunities right now is virtual exchange. We will talk probably more about the mobility of students, virtual mobility of students. So I think possibilities for blended mobility will be introduced much more than it was possible before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, when I was discussing things about virtual exchange or blended mobility possibilities for students, I always thought, okay, we don't have any distance learning programs or courses. Probably less than 30% of teachers are using Moodle. How can I expect that immediately we will have lots of virtual exchange courses or collaborative online international courses? Now everyone tried it and understood that it's possible. So I think it will definitely, for Vilnius University, for universities in total, and for ARQUS network, what it's good that we can, when the more intensive collaborations will take place, it won't be a problem to invite a teacher from Bergen to give one lecture for your students on the issue where he's an expert on, you know. So all of these things will become the reality. I think that students will have, well, much more, during one course, they will have much more experiences from different teachers, different students, collaborating with different students, not only in their country, in their university. So yeah, that's a great thing. And ARQUS, the possibilities, the window of possibilities, that's how Dorothy probably started presenting this network, window of possibilities through ARQUS for these virtual exchanges, for these just quick pops in the lectures, you know, by teachers from all these countries, will be really great, you know. So yeah, that's my couple of thoughts on the virtual learning and distance learning after the pandemic.
Thank you, Andrius. So we talked about students and virtual online remote learning. So Dorothy, as a long time and highly experienced professor at your university, how can online teaching be made more interesting and responsive these days to the students to get actually to improve the study quality, but also to make it just a more engaging experience when you're sitting at home and have to study?
I think in reply to that question, I would like to come back to what Andrew said at the beginning of his response to your first question, and that is the first thing we really need to understand is that what has happened in the past few months is not proper quality online learning and teaching, just as it is not really designed intentional virtual exchange. And I think one of the risks of the current situation is if authorities and if part of the community understand that what we have done as an emergency response is really quality online teaching, or is really what they call virtual mobility, I think we have a problem. I think we need to understand that what universities have done since March has been an emergency response to an emergency situation, a totally unknown emergency situation in recent history, not in the old ancient history of universities, because if we go far enough back in history, we will see university closures due to other pandemics. And I think maybe we have something to learn from those pandemics in previous centuries. But I think we must not fall into the easy discourse that, well, now everyone knows how to do this. As you said, is this really engaging? Is it really quality learning? No, it is not. And I think we all know it is not. We will perhaps see, and I hope we are all seeing, that this academic year, 2021, there is a better quality than the initial emergency response in last academic year. But I think we still have a lot to do. I think ARQUS is one opportunity for staff development to improve. And as Andrea said, we're not speaking about staff being familiar with the technology. That's a prerequisite for starting to learn how to develop quality distance learning, quality online learning. And I think that what we really need to do is seize this opportunity to improve what we are able to offer students, what we are able to offer our staff by way of staff development, with a very, very close eye on the need for this process to be intentional and to be supported. And I would say the same for what has been called virtual mobility. Personally, I think virtual mobility is a little bit of a contradiction in terms. Virtual exchange, which, as Andreas has said, is by far the term which we prefer. But again, this virtual exchange, which offers a huge number of possibilities, and Andreas has mentioned some of them, needs to be intentional. It needs to be properly written into the design of what we're doing. And not just something that has happened because there's been a pandemic and in the emergency response we've all discovered Teams, or we've all discovered Moodle, or we've all discovered whatever of the various platforms. They pre-existed. And what we need to do is incorporate the good side of those into what we do and learn from this emergency experience.
I see. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So we understood that online teaching definitely needs improvement in all different kinds of faculties and subjects, and we will definitely wait and hope for improvements. But talking also about the campuses and the diversity on the campus. So if online teaching continues after the pandemic, how would the mobility of students change if they no longer had to leave their own city or even not to leave their own home to attend courses at a foreign university in the form of an Erasmus exchange or in general exchanges, or to complete their full studies via full distance learning from home? Maybe Benedetta, you could tell about that a little bit more.
Well, I think we need to be very innovative and creative because, of course, online learning will never be like being fully in context. We cannot think that a person staying at home is able to actually have a full immersion in the cultural, linguistic, social environment which he or she can find when he or she goes abroad and stays for a shorter or longer time in a different context. So I have in mind 2 or 3 elements which I think we should consider. The first one, which is more general, more transversal, is about inclusive teaching. I think we have to train our lecturers, our teachers to inclusive teaching, which means they have to be actually formed in what, for example, different conditions, disabilities, learning disorders, economic backgrounds, different languages and backgrounds, different traditions from a religious point of view, whatever, mean from the point of view of being there online in a new environment where I don't have any links to reality in that moment. Okay, and so for example, at Padova University, we have an experimental project going on about inclusive teaching. We actually developed a good number of video materials where experts about different conditions, not only disabilities, not only learning disorders, for example, about, I don't know, what it means to be a student or staff with a refugee background, with a migrant background, what it means to be a student, and we have that, in jail, okay? So this is a good input that our lecturers are actually trying to learn themselves. And then there are articles supporting this video material, and then there are focus groups going on while they are teaching to teach in an inclusive way. This is having an enormous success. They are actually saying that they are much more aware of what quality teaching and teaching for all can mean. And they are becoming more and more sensitive about diversity, about intercultural issues, and they are considering the fact that on the other side, the population of students, and then again, it could be of staff, administrative or academic, it doesn't matter, tutors, etc., is really heterogeneous. And we have to think about that every time we go to have our classes. It doesn't matter if we are in presence or online. And this is one point. The second one is proposals, which I saw, for example, I saw when I was working at the Language Center and are still on at Padova University. One is called the active, not creative, but creative conversations. These are groups of students. One is, I don't know, mother tongue German, and the other ones want to learn German, but it's not all about learning languages. It's about actually sharing perspectives, debating current affair issues, discussing together, learning intercultural perspectives, and so on. And the last one, sorry, and then I will finish, is, for example, the Solia Connect program, which I don't know if you know, which is a very important global, worldwide program to connect among students coming from different parts of the world. And again, learning by actually confronting, by sharing, negotiating meanings and perspectives, all about, of course, current and very actual topics.
I just didn't want you to interrupt, but we will talk about these particular points a little bit later.
Oh, sorry.
No problems at all, but would be good to get maybe a little bit more insights into that when we will come to the next point. But thank you very much so far. Talking about online studies and in-person studies and our mobility, and an important factor in choosing a suitable university abroad are also tuition fees. In addition to students' duties at the university, many students work to finance their lives. On the one hand, there are students who finance their tuition fees themselves and also have to save money in order to be able to do an exchange in another country. But on the other hand, there are students who are supported by their parents and therefore have financial security. However, COVID-19 pandemic has affected everyone, and many have suffered financial losses or even lost their job. Therefore, if a student wants to do an exchange or even spend his entire studies abroad, she or he must have the necessary capital to finance their studies. So Lasse, a question to you, even though I know that in Germany studying is more or less free, in case online studies will resume post-COVID-19, would you say that students need to pay the same tuition fee amount as they would pay for normal in-person studies?
Yes, I think as we don't have tuition fees in Germany, I'd say my general position would be pretty clear to not have tuition fees at all, which I would also stress at every point where I asked about it. And additionally, I think we shouldn't try to differentiate inside of ARQUS so much between virtual teaching and physical teaching that it's possible to, in an after-COVID period, study only in virtual ways. In Germany, we've got, for example, the Fernuniversität Hagen. It's a university of the state of North Rhine-Westphalia, which is just a remote university. Like everything you do is remotely organized, and it's basically like the age average is, I think, 39 or something. So it's way above the average of the University of Leipzig, for example. And so the aim of that university is to offer remote university for people who can't study at a normal university. And so I think it would be better for us to differentiate between, if we want strict virtual teaching, I think there should be a new higher education institution on a European level to do so, but don't give that task to the existing alliances, as for example ARQUS. And I don't think that ARQUS should only do virtual. So I wouldn't say there should be different kinds of tuition fees, even though I understand where the question is coming from, and I understand that there is, like, virtual should be cheaper, but I don't think we should include these brackets, because otherwise there will be a two-class system of higher education inside our institutions, and I definitely think we should prevent that. And regarding the financial situation, it's very difficult, and I agree with that. But there are no clear solutions to that right now. And I mean, I've been busy in the half year of 2020 to organize a movement on federal level to fight for some COVID-19 relief funds for students. We were successful, but very badly. I mean, the funds offered by the federal government were very low and very badly designed. But yeah, that's what we have been doing, and I don't know the exact situation in your countries about that, but I think that needs to be stressed more in the future.
Maybe at this point, another perspective on this question: if the tuition fees should be the same or should be lowered for students. For example, at Vilnius University, our faculties have initiated a new way of basically paying the tuition fees by paying it in several months instead of to transfer the whole amount. But still, it doesn't change the financial situation of other students. So are there maybe other ideas or points of views onto this question?
Well, we have several measures to guarantee the right to study. Of course, this is thought for the moment for presence teaching and learning. There's no difference at the moment because we are in the middle of the new way and the pandemic. We have a regional scholarship, and we have some other measures, for example, fee waivers, or free accommodation, or free canteens, according to the income and the economic situation of each student. And then we have also some special measures, for example, for some special scholarships for students with a refugee background or asylum seekers. But given that, I think that what the COVID-19 pandemic actually produced from a positive point of view is that we all had to learn to change. We had to start learning and teaching online, which is a big thing. At Padova, we are of course trying to push as much as we can for presence learning and teaching, but at the same time we're having this dual way. So while presence lectures are going on, we are delivering the same lecture online. And in this very moment, our students can choose. They can either book their presence in our classes, or they can be at home. And as far as we have seen so far, of course, it's like a short period to make a real evaluation. But anyway, we can see that this is a very welcome methodology, because there are many students from the south of Italy, for example, who either for economic situations or because, of course, they are very far away now. I mean, Italy is a small, narrow, but very long country. And you take, I mean, you have to spend lots of money to go from Sicily, for example, to study and come to Padova. So they are appreciating the fact that they can be at home. So I think it could be left to the individual choice. There should be the double option all the time. So our classes and environments should be accessible, inclusive, and very well equipped to deliver quality online teaching while the presence teaching and learning goes on. In the future, I'm talking about the future. And I think this could be, for example, an opportunity for student workers or for students who have children, for many situations, for senior students. Of course, as I said before, being part of the academic and social life is something unique. You can't substitute that experience with any other, but it's up to you to choose. And if you can choose, I think there should be fees which are differentiated, because of course, if I go to university, I will actually be a user of libraries, of spaces, of laboratories, and so on. If I don't, I won't be. So a differentiation, I think, would be needed.
Okay, thank you very much. So coming maybe to the next our discussion, giving a short introduction. Several studies on disruptions to study flows in 2020 and also highlights people's long-term interest in studying abroad despite the virus. People are willing to put their international study plans on hold for a while, but seem less willingly to abandon them entirely. Indeed, there are several reasons to believe that this interruption to people's plans and to the normal character of things will last just as long as the coronavirus itself and the cast of its shadow. But those maintaining this view will quickly point out the temporary impact of earlier crises. For example, 9/11, the SARS virus, or the 2007-8 financial crisis, although recovery times across the sector were not always short. Dorothy, maybe do you believe that the popularity of abroad studies will come back to normal post-COVID-19, just like it did after 9/11, SARS, and the financial crisis 2007-8?
The first question there maybe is, what's normal? No, I think it's, we all talk about returning to normality. Normality is an interesting concept. But to answer your question, will we return to what we had before the pandemic? I suspect yes, but slowly. And you've quoted some of the studies, and some of the other studies which have been published are also predicting that there will be a gradual return to study abroad, but that it will be slow. It would take 4 or 5 years to return to the kind of figures that we had before. And what I would also say is that I suspect we will also see a change in how that study abroad happens. And I think there are two very clear differences here between degree-seeking study abroad, that is a full degree experience at a university in another country on the one hand, and the more short-term mobility, the 1 semester credit mobility, 1 year credit mobility, or even summer schools and so on. And I suspect we will see a diversification of the kind of study abroad. I think there may also be a reinforcement of the regionalization of study abroad, which was already starting to happen. For a long time, China was an exporter of students, for example. And if we look at the current trends, just before the pandemic, I say current, I should say just before the pandemic, we will see that China was actually becoming a reception hub at regional level for students in Asia. So there are trends which will no doubt also continue to intensify. I suspect that will happen. I hope that there will also be an intensification of different kinds of mobility. That mobility is not only seen in these traditional terms of a full degree program or a typical one semester abroad, but that we will see a diversification of short-term mobility, that we will see a diversification of the kind of mobility, thinking of work placements, research placements, volunteer work abroad, that universities will also be more flexible in these mobility windows, whatever form those mobility windows take, and recognize other kinds of mobility. And I think we need to find the role, the role which all of the opportunities which technology offers us can play in that diversification of internationalization. I think that what we are calling virtual exchange will offer new opportunities which complement the traditional ones. And I'm hoping that when we return to normality, that new normality will incorporate other opportunities and so become more inclusive. Because if I can just remind you all, yesterday at the ministerial conference, day before yesterday, on the 19th of November, the 48, now 49 members of the European higher education area ministers met to lament that the 20% target for 2020 of students with a significant international experience during their studies has not been met. And that's a 20% target. Lasse mentioned earlier that we in the European Universities Initiative have a 50% target on the table. So we've got our work cut out for us, and I think we all need to be very, very aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to present you a statement reflecting on the realities of COVID-19 crisis from a recent thought piece published in the University World News, White and Lee from 2020, from this year. We are hunkered down in our homes in a sudden, harsh, no mobility world. This complete shutdown of mobility has exposed an existing reality. We are already living in a world in which mobility is not necessary and sometimes perhaps not even desirable for meaningful cross-border exchange or international education. These events, as a consequence of COVID-19, have hastened the dawn of a new post-mobility world, or in which physical travel is unnecessary for the creation and transmission of knowledge across borders. First of all, would you agree with the previous statement or not? And beyond that, would you agree that the current developments and technological advancements made during the COVID-19 pandemic should be implemented in the future, even though we will no longer live in the midst of a pandemic? Lasse, you were neglecting it. Maybe you want to say something about it.
Yes, thank you. I think that's a way too harsh assessment of the situation, and which will not be the new normal, I believe. I was reflecting a lot about like internal organization in the last few months, for example, because I've been trying to organize the student council to be more active, and one of the things one of the things that I read in a newspaper article, which I don't know in which newspaper it was, but which I found very interesting, was like the development of a new normal for the academic service workers in general, in which there will be a bigger mixture between physical meetings and home office. And I believe that will be the most probable way. Because one of the big advantages I feel right now is that we can have like a lot of international cooperation just from our homes without the urgency to meet. I don't know if it would have been feasible for us to come to Vilnius to present our thoughts for your 31st birthday, but because of the online nature of our meeting, this is entirely possible. And in general, we have all these meetings all the time in our student councils, but also inside of our universities, where 12 people come together to discuss what happened in the last week and what will happen in the next week. And afterwards, there's some coffee drinking and some idle chat. And I think those meetings still will be quite necessary. They will be necessary weekly on a local level. But also, what is very, very important for us will be those bi-yearly meetings of ARQUS, where we get physically together to meet each other and to get to know each other and to build these informal networks, which are crucial for the workings those networks. In the end, will be crucial for us to be able to have these virtual meetings for them to truly work very well, because when we know each other and when we know how what's important for the others and know how they react in a physical meeting, then we can also transfer that onto our monthly meetings, which will happen in between the biannual meetings. And I think it will be a bigger mix, and that's also okay, because we all, as has been mentioned earlier, we all now know how to convey an online meeting, and can be productive of it. And we will profit also from. There was one very just before I end my speak. There was one very interesting finding in the first lockdown in Germany, and it was that actually most people were more happy with their lives during the lockdown than before. And one of the reasons I reckon that could be is because they don't have to have their daily commute, have losing all this time to get from A to B. And we can have these online meetings again, that sometimes these commutes are very crucial. So the article I mentioned earlier was saying, like, there will be maybe 2 days where you get to your office and be present and meet everybody, and everybody is on these 2 days in the office. But in the end, the academic service workers don't necessarily need the presence at the office on the other 3 days in the week, because there's so much reading and writing involved in our work processes that there can be a mixture, but that needs to be taken rather carefully, I reckon, because we need to have like very solid legal frameworks to prevent lowering of standards and stuff.
Okay, thank you very much, Lasse. So as you just have mentioned, the social aspects and the interaction between different individuals is very important to humankind and in general. So another information for you, or introduction, according to an impact paper about COVID-19 and the future of international student mobility published by the ESCP, the European École Supérieure de Commerce de Paris, a number of detailed studies have in fact provided compelling evidence that study abroad experience helped to develop a wide range of soft or transversal skills, such as problem solving and autonomous decision making, that are critical to successful management practice, as Benedetta has already mentioned before. Surveys based on participant feedback and or interviews with returnees from mobility programs and study abroad placements have consistently emphasized that the acquisition of such skills, also linking to international mobility experience to higher levels, it leads to higher levels of independence and self-efficacy. So the exposure to foreign cultures and environments is also associated with the development of multicultural skills, language skills, and more international consciousness. So how is it going to affect future students in terms of acquiring these multicultural skills, language skills, and more international consciousness when international mobility will switch to virtual mobility? How should students develop such skills without leaving their hometown and home country? Benedetta, you have already mentioned it before. Maybe you want to add on this point.
I mean, I'm not so much involved in international mobility or any kind of Erasmus environment any longer. I used to be when I was at the language center. Now I have more in mind, for example, international mobility by students with disabilities. And what you just read is absolutely what I can say from my small observatory and from my experience. We actually have tried all over the last 10 years to foster international mobility of students with disabilities, even with very severe disabilities, precisely because when they come back, they are, and they say themselves, they are different persons, and they are different because of all that development of skills that you just mentioned. They actually had the opportunity, sometimes the unique opportunity in their life, to kind of pull up their internal deeper resources, their strengths. They develop autonomy and independence like ever before. So I think, I mean, this experience has to be preserved in any way. We have to make it very clear to ourselves and to the world wide. Given that, I think that if we don't have a choice and we need to stay at home, like in this situation, we need, as I said, to be creative, and we need to kind of widen our perspective on teaching and learning. Teaching and learning is not only about, and the whole academic experience is not only about gaining competencies and knowledge related to specific topics. We need to actually give students the opportunity to acquire those very transversal, very wide-minded, very useful competencies, which are needed to actually go out in the world in the future and be confronted with very hard societal challenges. We don't know what kind of jobs we will have within 5 years or 10 years. We don't know what our lives will be about, and if we'll be like now, constrained in our homes and in very closed environments or not. The reality is changing really fast, as we all know. There are crises, economic crises. We have migrants flowing away from their countries and herds of people moving in the world. We have the economy changing, the technology changing really too fast to predict what kind of jobs, what kind of work environments we will have. So it's not so it is, of course, important to have specific competencies and knowledge, but we need to have to have tools in our pocket to be able to live and work in the world which will come in the future. And that is something that we have to think about when we plan teaching and learning at university. So what I was saying before, being creative means organizing many more moments, even online, where students, staff, tutors, anyone in the university community, and reaching out to citizens out there, because it's very important that the university has this kind of role, function as well. We actually think about the intercultural issues, about the sustainable development challenges, about the climate crisis and challenge and so on. And we organize moments to debate, to think about that, to engage in such topics, because these are the topics of the future. I don't know, this is my view.
Thank you very much. And I think the participants or everybody agreed with you by nicking, so I guess I don't do have maybe something to add to this point, or everything is clear. It seems to be that everything is clear. Okay, perfect. Then coming already to the last part of our discussion, actually. In many countries, a record number of young people are entering the peak higher education age brackets, increasing the compatibility and comparability across national education systems, credit system integration, and national action plans designed to stimulate mobility are other significant forces still very much in play. The same what basically you are doing with ARQUS right now. Attracting mobile students, especially if they stay permanently, is therefore a way to tap into a global pool of talent, compensate, for example, for weaker capacity at lower educational levels, support the development of innovation and production systems in many countries, basically to mitigate the impact of an aging population on future skill supply. And indeed, a defining quality of the present industry is that both state and institutional level, leading players are competing for mobile students and talents in a semi-globalized market in which mobile students have become an important source of talent and revenue. So some students choose their studies abroad because they're planning to live in their chosen destination country. In other words, they study abroad to get to know the norms of the country and to deepen their language skills in order to be more suitable for the labor market or after graduation. How can students who study at a university via distance learning be more approachable to companies and institutions in the local job market of their university that they're studying in? Maybe, Andrius, you could say something regarding that.
I don't know, to be honest. You're talking about companies at the countries of university that students chooses and not his home country, yeah?
Basically given me as an example. So I didn't plan initially to stay in Lithuania after my graduation, but maybe I stay. So if I would study from home in Germany, but study in a university here in Lithuania, how could in my case the hospitals get more attracted to me, or how is it for me more possible to get a job in the local job market without being physically here?
Okay.
I don't really think that this studying online in other country would open a lot of doors to companies in that country. I don't think so. Because usually what does that is the network that you create. In your case, in Lithuania, your Lithuanian friends, your Lithuanian colleagues, your the hospital colleagues you are in. If you would, I don't know, study finances, that would be your colleagues in the banks and so on and so on. So of course, in some cases, more and more companies will switch to to online workplaces, but I don't think that much of a work placement will be done global. I don't think that much companies will search for people globally. Usually, you have to come to office, and you will still need to come to office, and that won't be the case that I don't know, I'm living in Sicily and working in Vilnius. There won't be much more these kind of workplaces. So to be honest, that's why I completely agree with Benedetta and with everyone that talked about the mobility and the future of mobility. It's needed. It definitely won't disappear. It maybe even it will strike with a much bigger numbers after these 4 or 5 years that Dorothy mentioned, but it's not disappearing because when we are talking about international education, about international competences, you have to immerse yourself to the international environment. It's impossible to acquire these skills staying at your national environment. You know, you have to immerse yourself in multiculturalism to become multicultural. And of course, these kind of discussions with colleagues from Leipzig, Granada, and Padova can give you a little bit of taste of, well, a little bit of taste of it, but still you have to, you know, have day-to-day interactions with people in Lithuania to figure out, oh, maybe I understand what kind of culture Lithuania has and what kind of thing it would be to work in Lithuanian hospital, you know. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Okay, so usually these kind of leading players, they find international human resources and talents through career and opportunity fairs by sending scouts to various universities to interview the local and foreign international students and to search for future employees. A question to Dorothy. How do you think does the current pandemic affect exactly this process of finding new talents between higher education institutions and businesses? How do leading players on a state and institutional level compete for these talents and actually meet the students in person or not? How will this process take place in the current situation?
I think we have seen a few interesting examples of virtual employment fairs, virtual employment events, where students from all around in two directions, events organized by employers where students from all over the world are able to see virtually employment opportunities, and the other way around, organized by universities or groups of universities, where different employers come to the university and students are able to see what. So I think, once again, I think technology and virtual communication can be a complement to pre-existing forms of working. But I think perhaps in the future, we really need to bear in mind two things. One of them, Benedetta has already explained very, very well when we think of the job market. And Benedetta has already said, we don't really know what jobs are going to exist in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time. And we don't mean how many jobs. What we mean is what those jobs are going to look like. There are professions and posts of the future which we have no idea are going to exist. Technology, the world is changing at a speed which it has never changed at before. And while perhaps a graduate in medicine does have a better idea that the job will be called doctor, but the actual practice itself is probably going to look very, very different, particularly in some specialities. And that's going to happen across the board. And universities need to be ready to respond to that. I think that is very, very important. The other reflection, and again linked to our alliance activity and to international activity in general, is the whole issue of recognition of qualifications. And this is something where supposedly Europe has come a long way, but in fact we very often see that there are still numerous obstacles to recognition of full degrees, even within the European higher education area, even within the European Union. And of course that is a barrier. It's an important barrier and obstacle to mobility of professionals. But the whole recognition issue is also going to be complicated in the future through initiatives of micro-credentialing, credentialing competences rather than full degrees, and by non-education providers coming into the field and we've already seen this, we've already seen announcements from Google, for example, that they're quite happy to train young people for 6 months and they will give them the same recognition as university graduates. So I think here there is a huge change on the horizon, which universities need to be very, very aware of and prepare for very, very well. And it may mean a change in how universities certify learning, which then, of course, employers also need to be familiar with and so on. So I think we are living in changing times and we need to be very, very aware of these changes.
Okay, thank you very much, Dorothy. Benedetta, do you want to add something?
Yes, just a few words. I think that the European alliances, and meaningly ARQUS, are incredible opportunities to actually share models, share best practices, share guidelines, share policies, but not only share trajectories, activities, which are actually about the transition to the world of work for the future European citizens. Actually, the university period is a pathway. Before that, you have the pre-university period, then you go to university, but you go to university because you have a life design and career pathway in your mind. And so as from my small observatory of Action Line 2, for example, we have preventive early career education activities in one of our 13 activities. We have the Children Universities activities. We have a Women into STEM activity. And also, apart from the recognition of non-formal, informal, and previous both learning and professional know-how, but we also have in mind the construction, as I said, of a support network for inclusion regarding all and the job market transition for actually the for inclusive universities, meaning that we are trying to uniform our best practices and to create models so that even a person like you being in Germany can actually access this ARQUS University environment, big environment made out of seven heads, and see what's on there, what kind of networks I can find if I go to Vilnius, if I go to Padova, what kind of supports, how I can actually try to promote myself in that environment, what kind of aids I will have. And if I need to find accommodation, if I need to find my own position, if I need to have, I don't know, a counseling or psychological support there, if I need anything, I will have a virtual space. It will be the ARQUS portal in the end, where all this information is there, ready for this seamless mobility, which is not only about study mobility, but it is also about job transition and the job market out there. And I think this is a huge opportunity because it's never been done before. And if we manage to, after the 3 first years, to have developed at least these models and shared the common uniform guidelines about these topics, we'll have a lot already.
Thank you very, very much for your detailed, informative, and very transparent information and knowledge from your side as ARQUS representatives. And we talked a lot about right now about the ARQUS Alliance only being accessible for students in the European Union. Coming to the question part of our audience, there was one interesting question. It was stated by Justinas Brazaitis, one of our chairmans of our faculties of the business school. Are there any plans for ARQUS Alliance to start collaborating with universities of different continents to make a possibility for students to study in these education institutions online?
If I could perhaps comment on that, in the initial idea and in our mission, we make it very clear that our idea is to be open to the world. So although the initial conditions established by the call, which we are funded by the Erasmus Plus program, do not allow directly the participation of universities from outside the Erasmus Plus program countries to participate, we have always had in mind that sharing, and that we're all talking about sharing, and to us, I think, to all of us, and I think you can see this, ARQUS is all about sharing and sharing opportunities. We're all very aware that the 7 universities have different networks outside the European Union, which we hope to bring together to increase the potential of 7 universities for cooperation with universities beyond Europe, but also offering opportunities for students and staff from beyond Europe to come to our universities and to share the ARQUS experience. And in order to help us do that, we have an international advisory board, which is made up of 7 international experts, most of whom are from outside Europe, from South Africa, from Argentina, from North America, and so on. So very definitely that international perspective is there, indeed.
So definitely a thing that we can look forward to increase the alliance all over the world and not only in Europe as it currently is. There is another question from one medical student from Vilnius University, and she's asking about whether Bergen also allows medical students for exchanges. And when are these like we have mentioned, you have mentioned before that there are these cross university exchanges that are taking place. So when can students apply for that? Does somebody know that exactly, or maybe not yet?
I think these things are actually different in different universities, because the situation in different countries are completely different. Even in the cities of the same country, I definitely know that Bergen had a huge increase in cases before all the Norway. Now I think the situation is stabilized. So you just need to check the university's website and or contact directly the each university, because the situation is changing quite rapidly. So yeah.
So yeah, there are also some couple more questions, but not particularly related on the comments. So dear audience, please, if you have questions about border entering policy or other application due dates for exchanges, please check out the ARQUS website, check out the action lines, what ARQUS has to offer. It is written very, very detailed, and it's providing a lot of information and a lot of new possibilities that you can actually be a part of. So, dear Dorothy, Benedetta, Andrius, and Lasse, I would like to thank you very, very much for this very intensive and transparent and very interesting discussion. Very interesting to me. I hope for the audience as well. We were very, very lucky to have you, and I'm sure that we will definitely hear more from you in the future. And as a student of Vilnius University and part of the Vilnius University student representation, I want to thank you in the name of all in participating and wish you the best of luck in all the future ARQUS action lines and activities that you will provide for the students of Europe and the 7 cities that you have united. So big thank you from my side.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roman.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And we'll be happy to answer any questions if the audience wants to write to any of us afterwards. We're very, very, very happy to clarify details. Yeah.
We'd be also very, very happy to have more students on board. So if there are students who want to engage in, I can speak for Action Line 2, of course, but I think this is a very well shared objective. It would be wonderful. It would be wonderful to have students on board.
Absolutely. Yeah. On all the action lines. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's become engaged global citizens and global problem solvers. So I'm really looking forward to that. Okay. Then I wish you a very, very good day. Have a nice weekend. And thank you by participating at Busa 31st birthday 2020.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to all of you.
Ciao.
Bye. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.
and it's going to take place at 18 Eastern European time, at 6 o'clock Eastern European time. So check in on our VUSA page and we will be happy to see you. So happy birthday to VUSA and see you soon.